the human condition of worry and sorrow is not a, you might say, not a positive thing, but this sutra, and part of the strength of this sutra, is the fact that it honestly and directly deals with the human condition. It doesn't just stay in the heavens with the gods, with the divine bodhisattvas. It comes down into our lives. And I have begun to spot just how far into our lives it comes as I've looked and dealt with it. Now, my approach is that whatever words I put on a slide, they are from the sutra. I chose not to put my words or the words of anybody else. They are the words in the sutra. And so we are not taking them in their exact sequence. It's more thematic tonight as we deal with what is worry, what is sorrow. It gets a little bit better as the 4 lectures go along. We will talk about what takes the place of worry, what's worth worrying about, and finally, what is it that is the loving kindness of a bodhisattva? See if I can make a change. The sutras section I have chosen first, I really enjoy, because when I said that it just becomes something that tells us very directly what we live with and what we face, and particularly all of you who are teachers. And I know many of you are very skilled and you have a lot of experience. And I'm sure that all of us who have taught have at one time or another thought what the sutra says here. It says, people are so very strange. And it's because of their ignorance and delusions. When it says that people are so very strange, it says, and I think it means that when we look at life and we see what life is really like, it is very hard often to understand why people choose to live the way they live. They choose the very things often which bring about worry and sorrow. They choose to put their focus on possession of things, having money, having a style of life that does not, in many ways, lead to what we would think to be a happy and fulfilling life. And so the sutra tells us it's so strange. Why would people, understanding and knowing what they know, do what they do? For example, I'm sitting here at my desk, and I have here a writing pen. And you would think, that's just ordinary, right? And when I got this pen, I was very happy because I thought, now I have a pen which has ink in it. And if I write, lo and behold, an image appears on the paper. And yet, at the same time, I must keep in mind that this pen will eventually run out of ink. It will grow old. It won't retract. It won't have the point to write with. Some of you have heard my description of when I had an automobile that I really liked. And one day it wouldn't start, and they had to pull it up a hill to get it out of my house. And as I looked, the man who was pulling it had forgotten to hook the chain to hold it to his truck. And so, to my horror, my beautiful car that I was so careful of not to make a dent, not to damage it in any way, suddenly I saw it bouncing down the side of the hillside and smashing into a tree, totally destroyed. And I was at the time horrified. But what did I expect? That's what happens. Every car that you ever have eventually winds up being smashed and reused, melted. So people are very strange. I'm very strange. Why do I cling to certain things, even though I know that they won't give me? I know that new things will grow old. I know that. I just got a new shirt today, so I have it on. And I'm very happy with my new shirt. But I know if I live long enough that this shirt will begin to fray, fade, and I'll look at it and say, I've got to get a new shirt. At the moment when we have things at the height of their attractiveness, we have to know that there's the other side, which is everything that is created has destruction built into it. Even ourselves. The minute a baby is born, it begins to die. That is, the number of days left in its life began to be subtracted. Next, the sutra tells us that these people who are so strange have entered the dense forest. The sutra uses many metaphors. This one I like very much. A dense forest of the ignorance, which is characteristic of existence in the three realms, past, present, and future. Or we're in this dense forest. We walk into that forest, and when you walk in the forest, it's reminding us of the nature of a forest. What is the true nature of a forest? The true nature of the forest is that the trees live for a certain period of time, and when they die, they fall down onto the ground, And if nobody is there to clear them away, they will stay until the moss grows on them. They begin to rot away and finally return to the earth. So if you walk into a dense forest, it's teaching a Buddhist lesson. There it is, right in front of us. It is exactly what the Buddhists teach when we look at a dense forest and we look at the rotting logs of the past trees that have grown in that forest. But that's not so negative, because what we see is that new trees have grown. It's not that everything ceases. That's not to say Buddhism is not nihilistic. It doesn't say there's nothing that's there's nothing that's worthwhile. That is absolutely the wrong way to look at the Buddhist teaching. So when you walk in a dense forest, the forest, they've compared it to ignorance. But I like to say the forest first shows us the ignorance, which is when I walk into a dense forest, oh my, look at all this rotting wood. That's my first thought. But then if we think about it, if we allow the Buddhist teaching to show itself to us from the forest, we can see that this is cause and condition, birth and death, all of the things which we find talked about, discussed in the Buddhist text. So next time you walk in a forest, let the forest teach a lesson. And it's not just the forest. I look at my desk. It's very messy, but I look at it nevertheless. And as I look at my desk, I think a lot of things that are on this desk should be thrown away. But once they were considered by me to be very valuable things that I put on my desk. And when did they become less important? When did they begin to teach me what the Buddhists teach? So when I get up in the mornings, I try more and less to remind myself, today is like what the Buddhists teach. This day has already begun. And this day is getting shorter every minute. And because it's getting shorter every minute, there's a certain pressure, there's a certain urgency that I should take note of what this day is, because it won't always be with me. And I need to be aware, alert, part of it. Then the sutra tells us the minds of these strange beings have a deep-seated love for or an inclination toward attachments. And they are extensively beset with the calamitous difficulties that are inflicted upon them. We live our lives and we have worry. We have lamentation. We have bitter afflictions. And yet, we're very attached. I have a 92-year-old body. I have to spend half my life taking care of it. It's like it's become such a baby that I have to take care of it every single minute of the day, practically. And yet, this body, which is a worry to me, which sometimes is in pain, I have a deep-seated attachment to it. The attachment is very difficult to remove or to understand or to see. So we have to deal with life, which has a lot of suffering and pain in it. But yet it is life. And so we need to look to see, what will the sutra tell us about how to deal with all of these things? I'm not going to try to answer all of it as we go along tonight. These are things which I hope that as we do the study week after week with the sutra, the answers will begin to come, because that's the nature of the sutra. It tells us all the troubles, all the problems. It doesn't hide anything from us, but yet it is constantly, slowly, deliberately, insightfully teaching us how to handle these inflictions upon us and these problems as they come to us. There's certainly, for everybody, when there's death, when somebody you love, somebody you like, somebody you respect, when they die, we have agitation. The sutra describes it as a depression of the heart. And that, interestingly enough, is what the sutra says is the definition of worry. We worry because if we have lost someone, as we say, then what's going to happen to us? Just recently, we had the celebration for the second year of Master Xing Yun's death. And yet, when we look at Master Xing Yun's life, he never, ever turned away from the afflictions and the problems in his life. He had poor health, and he suffered many years of trouble with his body. And he never denied it. He never said, oh, I use Buddhism and I don't suffer. He said, I do suffer. I have been ill. I have had to face this body of mine. And I think what he was teaching us is, how do you face adversity? How is it you come to grips with dealing with pain and suffering? Buddhism doesn't teach us about this, then what are we going, how are we going to learn how to deal with what is inevitable? I'm sorry to tell all you young people, if you live to be old, I can tell you it involves a lot of things which we would call suffering, which we would call the fear and the worry. I I have to be very careful with worry. When you get to be my age and something happens to your body, you think, uh-oh, here it is. This is it. This is what's going to kill me. I have a cold. Uh-oh, it's going to turn into pneumonia. Oh dear, this is it. This is it. We worry, we fret, and worry doesn't solve it. Worry doesn't help. What does help then? The sutra says that what does help is that, number one, if you just simply are honest with yourself and say, okay, today I have the sniffles. That's what I have. I'm not going to project what's going to happen to them. I'm not going to future what's going to happen. I am going to look directly and honestly at what is happening. And what is happening is often very, very different from what we worry about. The problem is we can worry ourselves sick over things that never, ever come to pass. We can waste our lives and our time worrying about something that has not yet happened and may not happen. But what we do need to do is to be completely, as much as we can, be fully aware of what's happening at this very moment. So the sutra tells us that the problem that we face is that we are bound up. We hate some things and we love other things. And we desire some things. And these are like shackles, they're like handcuffs. We handcuff ourselves. And hatred and love are very, very much the same thing. It's very difficult to make a distinction sometimes between hate and love. We can love our children, or we can love our individuals, parents, people in our lives. But we can also be very angry at all of them. It is the family sometimes that we have the most hate for because they're closer to us. So we know that we're bound with these bonds, that if we think, oh, I'm just going to love my parents, it sounds really nice. And I'm sure, and I know that my children, for example, I know they love me. But there are times when they really don't like me very much because We have a disagreement. And it's very important when you have a disagreement that you realize that I still love this person, even though I disagree with them. I often have told the story of my sister who is approaching her 100th birthday. And she's very, very wonderful woman. And I became angry, upset with one of the members of my family. And I simply wouldn't contact him, just stayed away. And she said to me, never push somebody you love from your heart. Never do that. And I reconciled because I thought that she's right. We must not let hatred take the place of love. We must not allow love and hatred to be so dominating that they are shackles that bond us. So that's the sutra has so much in it. It says we need to make a distinction. There is pain. The pain is what's based on the sense faculties, what we perceive, what we experience. And we can have physical pain. That's pain. It will come. But we also know there's another kind of pain, which is intellectual, which is mental. So the sutra uses a different word, which we've translated as distress. We can become distressed, and distressed is painful, but it's based on our thought. So your body can hurt. If you break an arm, it's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. That's pain. But if I think everything is hopeless, I can't figure my way out of my troubles, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to turn, that's distress. So the sutra says, weeping attended by regretful sighing. This is what is meant by lamentation. It says there are times when I am so regretful of something that has happened that I weep or I cry, or something that happens to me which is so difficult that I find myself in tears. I recently had the experience, I was ill for a while and had to spend 5 months in the same hospital where they didn't let me out of the building. And it was a very hard time for me. And then recently I had to go back to see a doctor. And I walked down the hall, the old hall, to see this doctor. and I had post-traumatic syndrome. All of a sudden, I reacted so strongly to being there. The smell, the sound, the old hall, that when they took my blood pressure, it has gone up to 190. I've never had my blood pressure be so high. I I was regretting, I was lamenting, and my body was remembering and lamenting all the things that had happened to me in that place. And I thought that this is something which I must learn, that in order to try to avoid post-traumatic syndrome, I need to deal with the fact that, yes, I had that bad experience, and somehow I managed to live through it. I had an operation, and being in bed, I lost the ability to walk. And I had to learn to walk again. And I could take 2 steps, and I had to have a nurse hold me up so I didn't fall. Then I got to 15. And I remember walking down the hall where they would count the number of steps. And finally, I reached my goal. I once took 1,000 steps. And now I've got to a place where I can walk 1/4 of a mile. So what we need sometimes to do is to give ourselves some appreciation for what we do, what we have accomplished. Every single one of us has accomplished so much in life. We've learned, we've grown up, we've dealt with many, many issues, and we deal with many issues every day of our lives. And so when we're lamenting, we need to know that, yes, what we may be lamenting over did happen. But we also need to know that something else happened. I told you that when I used to take a walk and there was a young boy, and every time I walked by the house, he was my teacher. And he told me one day, I went to the beach and the waves knocked me over and I went under the water. And he saw that I was concerned. And then he said, oh, no, don't worry. I just stood up again. The Japanese have that wonderful thing. I used to have it, a ladder, where you have a little figure attached to the ladder, and the ladder has 7 rungs, and the little figure falls down all 7, and then it stands up again. And the saying is, always remember, 7 times down, but 8 times up. You can still get up. I had a fall, and I thought, when I went to the hospital, I thought, oh no, here it goes again. And I just determined that I know what this is all about. I know what I can do. I must not let myself get weak. I must not just lie in bed. I must exercise. I must keep myself from becoming a cripple again. And I did. And 3 weeks later, I was able to come back home. So lamentation is fine. So we know, says the sutra, that the Bodhisattva observes that all conditioned things are comparable to a sickness, like an abscess, like a sore. Every conditioned thing, the pen on my desk, the car that I drive, they're all conditioned things. That is, things that exist. And they all are going to suffer from sickness. They're going to decay. They're going to have problems. My poor granddaughter has a car, and 2 times somebody has crawled under the car and stolen the part that controls the emission. And that part is very expensive, $800. And they've done it twice. And it's like, when I talked to her about it, she said, this car, I bought it. I thought it was so wonderful. I was really delighted. And now it just worries me all the time because I'm afraid to park it. I park it on the street. Somebody's going to crawl under, and they're going to take my catalytic converter, and I'm going to have to put out nearly $1,000 to get a new one installed. What she was saying is just what the sutra says here. It's like a sickness. It's like an abscess. It's like a sore. It just keeps bothering me. Now, we're very familiar with the 12 links of causation. Because of feelings, we have craving. And when craving grows, then we grasp and have grasping. So I feel I like something, and that liking can cause the arising of craving. I want to crave, I crave whatever it is that I like. And you know, that's what addiction is. Addiction is something which our brain does to us. If you do something which the brain likes, then the brain becomes addicted to that. And you find yourself being unable not to do it. It's like alcoholism is an addiction. Drugs are addiction. The brain has craving. And when the brain craves it, then it's grasping. We have to have it. We have to go get it. So all these existing things, whatever they are, they have the nature of a grave disease. They are bound up with worry, lamentation, suffering, and anguish. Yes, I told you this was a hard lesson tonight. I warned you that we're going to talk about the problems that we face. We will later see what the sutra tells us about how to deal with it. So I hope that this is not too much of a downer, as I tell you, one bad thing after another. But I'm trying to say this is what we have to do. First, we just sometimes have to face the fires. It's like what happened to my 100-year-old sister I've just mentioned. Her house burned to the ground recently in the fires in LA in a matter of about an hour. Everything she possessed was burned and destroyed. And of course, we mourn for it. The things which we saw, the things we had become accustomed to, the deck we stood on and looked at the view of the ocean, all gone, all gone. So surely the people in Los Angeles now understand that existing things can be bound up with worry, with lamentation, with anguish. And all existing things are ablaze. The Buddhists talk about the three poisons. These three poisons, greed, hate, and delusion, they're with us all the time. And we have to deal with what they are. And they continue without any ceasing. It's not as if you get a rest and you say, okay, I had a bad day. Tomorrow will be better. It doesn't always happen that way. Tomorrow sometimes is worse. Tomorrow is the same. So our history as human beings, as far back as we can construct it, have been ablaze with greed, wanting more, with hate, being angry, and taking anger and living with it for months and months, and delusion, where we live with the thought that this can't happen to me, or this is not what I think it is. It's always been there. So existing things, say the Buddhists, these existing things afford us no protection because they're bound up with love and hate, worry and sorrow. And you'll note the word love. Love and hate are just two sides of the same coin. And we need to understand that this is the way in which our worry and sorrow can come as much from love as it can come from hate. We can worry more about the people we love than the people we hate. Love does come with this other side. And so the sutra begins to tell us how to handle this. We have to know that existing things are just like a magical thing that's been conjured up. None of them has a true nature. So if I say this wonderful car that I have has the nature of being a car, well, I could take it apart and try to find its true nature. And by the time I finished dismantling the car into all of its pieces, I would never have discovered a true nature of the car. And that's the same for us as humans. When we talk about our true nature that we have of self, you can't find it. You can't identify it. You can never hold it. it's like an ephemeral magical trick. Looks real, seems real, but we can't find it. We can't deal with it. That's because all existing things are, in one sense, uncreated, non-arising, neither coming nor going. Because what are existing things? They are made of what already exists. All existing things, we're not inventing reality when we put together the things in nature. So the existing things are made of what was already here. We're not creating it. When I build a car, the existing things of iron ore and everything else was already here. So when I build a car, that car doesn't arise because what I call a car and want to give it a permanence simply is not there. The minute you drive the car, new car, out of the lot that you bought it from, it's already lost a lot of its value. The minute you drive it away from the new car store, it's lost value. And why? How can it have lost value? That's because we project value onto those particular conglomerations of physical parts, and we love them or we hate them. We give our attention to them. But the car, as we conceived it, never existed, ever. There was never a permanent car. There was never a permanent thing that came into existence, or a thing which is going out of existence. It was just what it was from the very beginning. So our experience of existing things is very important, says the sutra, to realize that much of what we think to be our own creation is uncreated. Much of what we think has been put together and is arising. There's no arising, there's no newness, there's no coming, there's no going. Now, Sutra tells us when cause and conditions come together, that's when we say things exist. So if the cause and conditions for a car, the parts, all the parts are put together. I once went to a car company where they were manufacturing in Detroit, Michigan, and I asked one of the people, when does a car become a car in your view? Because each day, the production line that he worked on produced 2 complete automobiles. And they started out with just the parts scattered around on the floor, and they put them together, and each team put together the whole car. And I said, when does a car come to exist? And he said, well, I think it comes to be a car when I put the key in, turn the key, and the motor starts and it moves. And I thought, he has not described a car to me. He has just said the conditions have come together in such a way that he calls it existing. So if I take out the part of the motor and the key, then he would have to say, no, this is not a car. But he would find it hard to say that, wouldn't he? I can look at something which is not complete, which is a wreck of a car, which has no engine, and yet I call it a car. But because the conditions for it being a car are scattered, in fact, it isn't a car. It doesn't meet the requirements. So for us as humans, the progressive maturation of the aggregates, that is the skandhas, human experience, that's what we call aging. But when human experience and consciousness disappear, this is what we call death. This is the Buddhist definition of death. Death is that moment when consciousness departs from the physical body. But at the time of dying, because we have such a fond attachment, we have agitation. We have that depression of heart. That's what we mean by worry. I worry that I may die, or I worry that somebody else may. So because there's an increase in grasping, there is what we say becoming. And when we say becoming, it says you have birth. Birth is followed by aging. Aging is followed by death. And worry, sorrow, suffering, and the afflictions come about because of this procedure that's so normal. That's like nature itself. We suffer and are sad because of nature. So when death, old age and death arrive, the sutra says we're seized with intense mental torment. And it's because of this mental torment that we are beset with distress, worry, sorrow, all of the things, the lamentations. And so, as a final statement for this, in future lifetimes, beings may be burned up in these fires, the fires of suffering. We're not only existing in our mind in this world, but we talk about rebirth. And we think of rebirth as being, is it us that's reborn? And this sutra is beginning to tell us that in future lifetimes, however you think about the future, whatever being there are, will also be burned by the fires of the three poisons and the fires of suffering. Well, I'm going to stop. I've given you enough bad news. This is what we face in life. And I really look forward to hearing some of your comments. I just want to remind you, this is not the whole story of the Buddhist Sutra. And that as we go along, keep in mind this lecture. Keep in mind what we have said tonight. and listen to what the sutra will begin to tell us about how to handle these things.